This is AV SuperFriends On Topic, a 30-minute monthly roundtable focused on a single topic. This discussion will be opinionated, to the point, and saturated with our well-known blend of painfully won expertise and deeply ingrained immaturity. For July 2021, it's the AV SuperFriends On Topic. Well, welcome back, everybody. Time for another Friday afternoon podcast adventure with the AV SuperFriends. My name's Chris Dector. I'm joined today by Justin, Larry, Marc, Jamie, and Rachel. Everybody is here for you today. In fact, we did one better than everybody. We have one more person who we'll introduce here in a moment. So it's going to be a big show for us, but we're still going to stay to that 30-minute time limit and see how we do on it. So
we're going to get as much show as we can. It's going to be a huge show confined to 30 minutes.
It'll be a really huge show within the limits of the show. So today's show, the topic is summer projects, summer AV projects. So we're going to go through one by one. We have a list. I hope everybody brought their list. I have my list here. We're going to go through one by one of all our summer No, we're not going to do that. That's boring. I don't want to hear about it. And we did that a couple of weeks ago where we talked about interesting summer projects. So we've all got classrooms and conference rooms and lecture halls and all that fun stuff to do. Don't want to hear about it. But we're doing
the same thing you all are doing right now. You're all busy.
Yeah, everything that you're doing right now on your campus, that's what we're doing too. So there you go. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. Instead, we're going to talk about the current challenges we're having with our summer AV projects and the challenges we're having with implementation of those. And to help us discuss this, we've invited Clay Stahlka with Starin. He's their senior PreSales Engineer. Welcome, Clay.
Thank you very much, Chris. Glad to be here.
And we wanted Clay to come on. Two of the Super Friends know Clay, and they said, if you guys want to talk about kind of a different perspective or talk from a different perspective on the larger AV industry, and especially some of these issues with the supply chain and what we're seeing out there, then here's your guy. And so we said, well, let's get him on, and here he is. Thanks for joining us, Clay.
Thanks, Chris.
So, but before we get to our super boring topic of what are we doing this summer, we do want to talk about a little bit of AV news, and Marc and I were trading texts earlier today and said, I've got some boring, I have some boring news on AV supply chain. Do we want to stay with that? And you said, no, here's a humdinger for you. That was too boring. So you found something that's interesting, but with kind of a cynical take on it. So Marc, do you want to give us an overview on this?
It might even be a little bit more boring. Anyway, so yeah, I'll give you my take on what this new boring news is. And we've talked around this a little bit in the past, but I opened my email this morning when I was eating my breakfast and just my daily deleting of the things that have come in overnight. And the one what I was in the process of deleting was one that I got from a source that you probably all get all of your AV news from, which is Robinhood app, right? So all of your AV news that you get probably comes by way of Robinhood as their snacks email. So and this one was, the holograms are coming, tech companies' big bet on future remote work. And I was like, really? The holograms is really a thing right now? Like this, and apparently they kind of went on, and Google did like their Starline, and WeWork is partnering with Holotech company to bring holograms to 100 WeWork buildings around the globe, which is kind of made me wonder. It's like, why? Do people really want holograms in their Zoom experience? Is that like a real request? Like, I like the fact that I can just wear flip-flops and a blazer. The last thing I want to have is like the full version of me in a hologram. Like that I feel like that doesn't meet any of the real desire to have in like a collaboration platform. And so
yeah, I don't understand do we need that? Do we require that? I mean, it's cool when you're watching like the Michael Jackson Experience, or what was the Queen one where they had Freddie Mercury, but that's kind of a niche. I don't see it as I want to attend a meeting and see a life replica of all these people that I didn't really want to see to begin with.
Right. And so, like,
Jamie, Marc, you're absolutely right. Nobody wants to see a hologram of you. That's not what it's for.
Oh, it's not for me?
In my opinion. No, it's not for people. Like, I know that there are people who are like, yes,
my dog,
let's see each other's shoes during meetings. No. This is not what makes this technology useful. What makes this technology useful, in my mind, is product design, right? Like, it is not useful for me to be able to see a 3D model of my colleagues. It is totally useful for me to be able to see a 3D model of the thing my colleagues and I are designing together. That's a lot more information. You can communicate about it a lot more easily than you can a series of 2D models. That makes a lot of sense to put into a WeWork, because by nature, you're dealing with a remote workforce there, or a dispersed workforce. Like that's something that's going to be that WeWork is going to have to really struggle to bring people back into its offices, and that's a compelling differentiator for them. That's a work experience that they can't afford to have in their homes that would be really useful for them in a co-working space.
You know,
But
we're
if
going to
they're
have
going
a
back to-
designing on a 2D environment anyway. Like, does this really give them that much of an advantage?
Well, let's think about reality here. So what does that workflow look like? You're going to bring your super secret 2023 Corvette that nobody needs to know about into a We office and figure out how, like, what are the objects that we're designing that we can bring and transport to these 100 offices around the world that are probably in LA, New York, and wherever else. Like, I mean,
I guess if it can wrap into like the 3D modeling, we'll just call it SketchUp, right? Because that's the one everybody knows. If it can link into that and read it, then I guess that makes sense. And you know, as a real-time job evaluation, Rachel, you're absolutely excelling at the part of keeping us, you know, making sure that we're seeing the whole picture. You're succeeding there. That's a 4.
I believe in
Out
the
of
template, Jamie, it
400,
says
but it's a
Rachel
4.
corrects us. So
There. Okay. Rachel corrects us. So you've succeeded. I now am humbly saying, you know, you're right. I'm used to saying that, by the way. You're right.
Oh, well,
can I play devil's advocate though?
I'm still not seeing it.
So in this article that Marc mentioned, which I have a copy of, and then all the examples they give: Project Starline, Portal, the WeWork one, Microsoft HoloLens. Here's the kicker: none of those are holograms. By very definition, not a single one of those are holograms. They are 2D representations of a 3D object, yes, but they are simply using existing technology. The Google Starline, I don't know why that's getting so much press. That's freaking Pepper's Ghost from 150 years ago. There is nothing new they're doing there. Yes, they've wrapped it under a nice little package, and they're going to sell to a whole bunch of people who have way too much money on their hands, but I don't care. And the thing like Portal system is just they're taking the back off of an LCD and showing it. So yes, it's very cool. I think maybe the issue I have with it is all the examples, and to your point, Rachel, all the examples that they use right now are, now you can see the guy on a bigger image. I don't care. Show me something interesting with this. So it's all about the product.
That's their fault for giving you dumb examples. I work with an organization called the Kronos Group that actually develops the back-end standards that enable 3D rendering and AR/XR rendering, or some of the back-end standards. They develop open standards. And the people that I talk to in this group are people from, you know, Wayfair and Target and Google and Microsoft, places like that, Autodesk, Adobe. And they are looking at this they're looking at these 3D models as a way to communicate more effectively about products primarily. But I could see it if it gets to the point where it really is, you know, widespread, cheap to do, easy to do. I could see it being very effective in educational contexts. Like, think about the possibility of having students be able to work on a cadaver without having to have a whole bunch of literal cadavers. Or the possibility of being able to pre-program.
But we already have
that cadaver.
most of that, though. I mean, there's already tools out there that do that.
Oh, I thought you meant the
as
cadavers.
an example. Yeah, I mean, there's cadavers.
people
like
lining up for that job.
We got
There's
plenty
a
of dead bodies. We're lousy
There's a lot
with
of
them
those
all
too.
over
Yeah,
the
I
place.
mean,
we've already, like, I've been at several at 2 universities that have already installed digital cadaver labs. So I mean, we've already got.
But why does it have to be a
we have a
lab
real
though?
one.
Like, why can't I do that with my AR glasses at home? You know, that's what needs to get lighter and easier.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, developing products. If big companies like Boeing started developing products over this platform, wow, those hackers are going to go to town from China trying to get
safe.
intellectual
Justin,
property.
not to burst your bubble, but Boeing did that in the early 90s. It was CD-ROM
it's gonna
based with the
get
big
worse.
VR glasses. So.
You know, because these people are introducing a new technology that's not tested, and it's like, well, there's
But
going
it's
to be
not like their
open
product
problems.
design data isn't already on the cloud. I mean,
Right.
that's all. That risk is already there, and making it 3D data doesn't make that risk worse.
But I mean, coming back
It's
to
a
like the
different
whole
transport.
the whole blast on this email, right? It's now it came from the Robinhood app, right? Which, like I said before, the premier AV news agency on the planet.
And
so,
what stock were they selling with it?
exactly. So I don't know if
That's
it's
a question. Yeah,
it's a pump and dump thing, right? I don't even use the terms. Like, it's get excited, go find something that you think is hollow and invest in it. But and then they took their whole spin was like all about work from home. So it's really written like from the perspective of, oh, you want to have this in your house so you can see your colleagues, and it's like, no, I don't want to see my colleagues as a holographic
Yeah, that
version
is
in my house.
frustrating to me. Like, that is not the use case for this.
Yeah, I have a lens cap for my camera, let alone, a giant display here that shows all my colleagues all the time.
Yeah. So moral of the story is choose your media sources correctly.
Well, I agree with your cynical conspiratorial view of that. Yes, they mentioned 3 big companies: Google, WeWork, Microsoft. So you go buy their stock, and then Robinhood, who takes a slice of that, they make a little bit too. So there you go. All right. Well, so much for that news. None of these are holograms. Holograms in general, kind of cool, but Rachel's point, 100% dead on. Until they get better content for it, and it's scalable and something that we can all have and find it to be valuable, then this is all just kind of pipe dream stuff anyway. So, yeah. Okay. Well, Mark, push the commercial button.
Believe it or not, this show is actually as disciplined as we get when talking about our industry. If you'd like to hear more, let's say, unfiltered content from the AV SuperFriends, then head over to avsuperfriends.com and check out our other show, Off the Rails. Join Chris, Mark, Justin, Larry, Rachel, and I as we dig into the different aspects of higher ed AV. We'll also chat about pedagogy, swoon over the shiny new gadgets, and see what other interesting topics we pull out of the mailbag. That's Off the Rails and found on our website at avsuperfriends.com.
All right, so the topic of the month here is our summer AV projects, but as I said earlier, we're going to focus on the challenges we're having implementing some of these projects, specifically around the supply chain. So Clay's here to give his perspective on that. So just in prepping for the show, just kind of putting some notes together, I got an email today from one of our IT pros on campus who said, hey, those specialized Dell PCs you ordered for your project you're doing this summer, yeah, those are 90 days out. And I said, that's not too bad. We can probably make that work. And then I reread the email. It said they're 90 business days out, not 90 days out. So that's almost 5 months delay on that. And I believe a lot of that comes down to chips used on the GPUs in those particular displays. But it's a specialized space. It was not going to be lit up for classes this August anyway, so that's not a big deal. We'll roll with it and hope things improve. But that's just in microcosm. That's examples of the sort of things we're seeing with a lot of AV gear right now. So what are you guys hearing? Are you running into the same sort of issues where things that you would normally expect to, I'm going to put an order in, it shows up 2 or 3 weeks later, we go install it, we're all good. But now we're running into, well, maybe we can't. And what do we do about that?
Sure. Well, we're lucky. We're pretty much, it seems like, getting past the hump of the pandemic-oriented delays. I mean, that's another whole issue that, confronted us in most of 2020 and into the first quarter or 2 of this year. But it's pretty much over. And that's nice because people are back to work for the most part on the manufacturing side, and so their product availability. And of course, in distribution like we are in, it's container load products. So we have been lucky to get the large quantities coming on a regular basis so that it's really not hard to keep up with the commodity items. Where the real chip shortage that everybody's reading about is taking place is in the display domain. That as Chris said, he said GPU, but realistically, as I understand it from engineers, it's the display drivers chip, the family of chips that they use for display drivers. On the Dell side, Chris, that you mentioned, I think that's probably mostly because of the display portion of the computers, the laptops, what have you.
Well, there's no displays on these. These are rack mount workstations. There's no displays, so it's something else really. But yeah.
So that would make sense because my small form factors are coming in, but my all-in-ones, because I'm doing 3 or 4 computer labs, all of those are delayed until September or October. And it's the same hardware aside from the built-in display versus the non-built-in.
Of course, we have to also take into consideration if everybody's going back into normal way of life. And we were shut down by and far for most of all last year. How long does it take for people to, get back up into the flow of things and get the supply chain going? So some of it is going to be just that. And nobody wants to spend money up front when money's not coming in, right? And this is not different in the manufacturing side of things. So they didn't crank their assembly lines or whatever, going full blast or whatever when nobody was buying anything. So, there's some of that. But
were
besides,
people not buying things? Because tech spending remained pretty high last year, unlike a lot of other categories, especially in the consumer space. It shot way up.
You're right, Rachel. But remember, who is the main money maker for these manufacturers? Well, it isn't us. That's the thing. We all have to go. We all think our world, rotates around Pro AV or whatever, and it does for us. But that's a very small market share for these big manufacturers. And so they're shipping to the Walmarts and the, Sam's Clubs and Costco's or whatever of the world. And we get short shrift when it comes to products for our commercial displays, as an example, as opposed to the consumer displays. Yes, consumers were buying because they were locked into the house and they wanted a new TV or whatever. But we didn't get those. And the other thing beside those chips on the display driver side, for whatever reason that's unbeknownst to me, the glass that they use in displays was also in great shortage and continues to be in great shortage. So again, taking who one hand washes the other, right? Who's paying the big bucks to these manufacturers? It isn't us. So therefore, we get the short end of the stick when it comes to delivery on these kind of products. So and then on the audio side, on the pro audio side, we can't forget that last year there was that massive fire that took out the chip manufacturer that made all the digital to analog converters, or most of the digital to analog high-end converters. So some of the companies that make the high-end pro audio products, in our world, we think of them as DSPs primarily. But, in the MI business, it's, recording consoles or live consoles and things of this nature. Those are in terrible shortage right now, even though I'm sure they're finding a way to manufacture them again after the factory burned down. But, it takes time. And so those are the three things that we have to keep at the forefront, in my opinion, in order to plan our buying, our purchasing for not only this summer and fall and into the winter, but also into 2022, because the industry experts, from everything that I've read, have clearly said this is not going away until at least Q2 of 2022.
With that kind of wait time, I wonder if this is going to drive some changes in the way people do things. Like, I've already heard suggestions that we're going to see more interest in video over IP, especially for extension and distribution, because of the chipset shortage relating to HD-based T. And I'm starting to hear rumblings that that interest in NDI is growing among enterprises because it uses standard networking infrastructure, and you can get that stuff. So I'll be interested to see if this changes the way people design their distribution, because the way that they're used to doing it, the way that they're comfortable doing it, can't be done right now.
Well, I agree with you. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say something that I've noticed on my end that I wanted to, kind of see if anybody else noticed, is pent-up demand is kind of spiking demand right now, and it's really hard for manufacturers to catch up because, my business for Rexing Consulting Group was down in half in 2020, and now everybody that was going to do projects in 2020 are now doing them all at the same time in 2021. So I'm ordering way more stuff than I ever ordered before, and how many other people are experiencing that from a business side.
Well, there's one other point in that equation too, Justin, and that is that the big dogs are hoarding.
Yeah, I didn't think of that either.
There's some articles been written in the last month or two encouraging them not to, in the trade magazines. But,
really?
they're not going to listen to that.
They're going to toilet paper us then.
Well, that's what it was, an analogy to toilet paper that I read about in that article. So, but what they're doing is they know that this is going to affect their summer business. And so they're ordering incredibly big quantities of these products that are on the bubble. And it's going to affect all of the rest of us, whether we like it or not. I mean, there's no other way around it.
So, Clay, have you seen, and I've had some emails from some vendors that are flat out warned, like, hey, come July 1st, like, you should be expecting like a 7% increase in your cost for products across the board. And I kind of want to think about that as like, are there schools out here that are not working or moving forward with their summer plans? And are they thinking they're moving forward in yesterday dollars, and they're going to kind of hit a brick wall when they find out that everything is actually priced in tomorrow dollars, which is a whole lot worth less than what you have in your pocket today. And I don't think that ever is going to go down. And so when we start talking about the inflationary piece of this, I mean, are you seeing manufacturers kind of giving that warning, like, hey, we have things that are out of our control, and we're just going to conveniently pass that along to you because, and by the way, we're never going to give it back. So good for us.
Yeah. Well, they're not telling us that. Okay. They don't, nobody's putting up a billboard saying our prices are going to go up July 1st or something like that. And everybody wants to play the card where they're going to try to hold pricing as much as possible for the sake of existing orders. But clearly, it's a supply and demand world. And it's no different than it was, whatever it was, a couple or 3 years ago, or going back, whatever. I think it was 15 years probably now when I remember the big spike in copper prices and all the cost of cabling went berserk. I mean, berserk. It wasn't, a couple of percent. We're talking, it was 200% increase in price or whatever at that time, maybe more. And, this is going to happen again. And it's just the nature of business. I don't think there's any reasoning for that. But when you've got a hot commodity and there's short supply, you can get that money. And that is the way it's going to be played, I'm sure. But no one is giving us a projection. But what it is our responsibility to do is to provide projections to the manufacturers so that we can in turn help them understand how they're going to recoup their losses in future business. And that can hopefully prevent massive price increases.
Are you seeing any change in processes? I've heard a lot of manufacturers say, well, we've changed how we're filling orders, so we're going to basically do first in, first out. And if little guy gets that order before the big guy, then we fill the little guy's order first. Or is there anything that manufacturers are talking about changing to make this more efficient?
No, I don't think they're changing anything. The reality is that's a dance that we've had for as long as I've been in the business, really. That's a long time. And, like dinosaurs roamed the earth. But anyhow, that's nothing new, right? They want to dance with the people, that are bringing the money, the big purchase orders. No, I don't think so. But I do think that our behavior on the, let's call it the consumer end. We're not the ultimate end users, but we're the consumers of their products, right? So if we project to them what our future looks like, then they have a better indication of who they're going to allocate for, if allocation is required. Now, there are some companies, and again, let's go back to displays, because that's going to be a hot topic. Impossible to get displays until September at this point in some cases. So with that in mind, who are they going to fulfill their orders to first? It's going to be the people that have projected that we have a job for 100 here, 500 there, 250 here. They know that's on the docket. Now, some of those may fall through. You may not have a PO already in your hand or whatever, but you've projected to them your anticipated buying power. And when they see that, they're much, much better equipped to provide that to you in allocation because they knew about it. Now, the sad part about go ahead.
Yeah, well, on that note, and I didn't mean to interrupt you too much, but
no, it's okay.
Where's the threshold there? Is it 50? Is it 20? Some folks are smaller or smaller companies, and for them, ordering 30 displays is a big deal. Some people, like you said, you had 150, 500, whatever. When's that threshold? And I know lead time is weird, but if I can guesstimate in January I'm going to need 50 displays, when should I start checking on that? And what's the threshold?
Okay.
I know there's no set stone, so just, we're winging it here.
It's interesting, Jamie, that, numbers add up quick. And I know that you talk a lot about, K through 12 and various projects like that. And in that environment, they're often larger numbers. So it may only be 20 per project, but you may have half a dozen projects coming this summer. And so you add that up and you're into the hundreds. So it's surprisingly how the real small numbers are not so small when you look at the big picture. But the truth of the matter is, we have a funny group in this industry, right? I've always laughed at ourselves. I laugh at myself. The reality is that we're old-fashioned in many ways. We hold things close to the vest. We don't like to let out the name of who it is that we have a prospect, an opportunity moving forward. We don't like to let people know who that is. We don't like to tell the manufacturers all the time because we're afraid they might, mention it to a competitor or what have you. We're funny that way in this business. And because of that, the number 10 or 20 that you just mentioned, Jamie, is better than zero. And most of the people in our industry might not be saying a peep out of their mouth. And when they don't, then you'll get the 20 in allocation because they knew about it several months ago. And I think that's the big thing to keep in mind. Now, we want more people to do that, which in turn will give them larger projections. But
how do we push that though? How do I say, here's my local integrator that I buy my boxes from. I say, okay, I know in about 3 months I'm going to need 50 or 20 displays. Can you pass that up the chain? Is it as easy as that, or do we need to skip it and go straight to like Panasonic's rep and say, hey, I got 20
to
coming?
Your manufacturer.
Yeah, and as a follow-up to
depends how you buy.
Yeah, and as a follow-up to that, with the fiscal budget happening in July, I won't know until middle of July, August, exactly how much money I'll have. And if I have a project in winter, is that enough of a lead time, or are we talking about longer than 6 months in order to get the product at this point?
It's not longer than 6 months.
Not the product, just the projection. Yeah.
The projection so I can get the product.
The idea is that if you order today, like I've got a job next week and I need, and here's my PO. You can expect 8 to 12 weeks of lead time on product that's not in stock. Now, as I've said, we're doing our very best to have container loads of product brought in so that you don't experience that. But if you're ordering direct with the manufacturer, or, if I'm ordering with the manufacturer, I know it's going to be a minimum of 8 to 12 weeks lead time. Then you have to have contingencies, the plan Bs of the world or whatever, up to 24 weeks. That's 6 months.
Man.
And there's your 6 month number. So, realistically, okay, and I understand everybody doesn't have deep pockets, but if you can start bringing stuff in on a scalable basis or something, so that you have it, the items that you're going to use later in the year, to place that order now. The conversation that I recommend people have, and I can speak to it as a distributor, I can say that we're glad to work with you on terms. So if you're a small company and you can't afford to buy what you need over the next 6 months now in cash, then go ahead and call us and make arrangements, So, and I'm sure all the other competitors in my business would do the same thing gladly if you make those arrangements in advance. But get those POs in, because it might be a long time coming before you see product of certain categories.
I think that was really insightful advice for a lot of folks that they don't think about. I mean, not everybody's Marc, where the manufacturer just delivers it at his doorstep in the middle of the pandemic. Not everybody's that awesome. So for the rest of us in this world, that's really good advice, and I'm glad you said that, Clay.
Yeah. So Clay, this has been super helpful for us. I think it's interesting to get your perspective. You were looking at things from a slightly different angle. And it sounds like what we're seeing right now, just to kind of sum up here, but what we're seeing is a combination of things with COVID shutting down some manufacturers and then those spinning back up, with people not buying as much during COVID, and now with everyone rushing back and wanting to buy everything and assuming it's going to all be there in 2 weeks like it normally is. We're seeing this kind of perfect storm, I hate to use that phrase, but it is, of things causing these delays. And I think probably the most prescient thing you said here, and Jamie just mentioned it again, was, get in touch with your suppliers and especially the manufacturers. Let them know what you're working on, and let them know, even if it's something like Larry said, hey, we're planning stuff out for December, but let people know that now, because that at least lets them get those things in the queue. And even if it does take 3, 4, 5, 6 months to get some of these things, if they knew it was coming, it sounds like that'll be imminently helpful. So that's excellent advice for everybody out there. I'm going to make sure I do all that too. I do want to keep this to our roughly 30 minutes here. I want to go around one more time. Any other last comments from anybody? And I want to come back to Clay for any last comments there too.
Use your data. If you know you have things coming up, it sounds to me that let that data do some talking for you, like forecast and continue.
Your plan D should be going to Best Buy, because Best Buy and Target could be hoarding TVs too.
And I'm gonna have to call you later, Clay, and talk about this new hologram thing. This article that we just had, it sounds like I'm gonna need a whole bunch of those.
We can't get those. There's a chip shortage.
250
we can't build
holograms.
holograms without a chip. So
and the only other thing I would add is it might be a good time to look at your replacement cycle budget, because it sounds like there might be a 10% budget increase in your future.
Yeah, personally, I wonder how much of that is legitimate, just as we're seeing slight inflation, we're seeing prices go up across the board. How many are manufacturers now saying, heck, we can raise our prices and get away with it because no one's going to question it right now?
Exactly.
And those prices aren't coming back down. So, all right, Clay, thanks very much for joining us. Anything you want to plug or anything you want to throw in, talk about Starin, what you guys are working on, any of that?
Oh, I don't need to plug anything. We're certainly happy to work with everybody. And we enjoy the relationships we have with our existing customers and look forward to having some nice new ones. I want to say one last thing, and that because it is June and it is hurricane season coming up. And the next, how we always joke about what's going to be the next great shortage or crisis or whatever. Plastics is the next thing I'm hearing that's going to be in short supply. And if a hurricane should hit the Gulf Coast where all the oil and petroleum products are, then make sure that anything that is made of plastic, which is most of anything these days, make sure that you got access to those products on your projection list.
So we're short plastic or short glass. So if we start drinking massive amounts of rum and Coke and recycle, we're good, right?
When do we
recycle your rum and Coke?
Oh, you display glass. All right, I misunderstood.
Unfortunately, nobody actually recycles either plastic or glass. So
there's a whole island of
that's why
plastic.
there's a shortage. That's why.
Just make things out of grass and
I
dirt.
dutifully gather up all our recyclables at the end of every project, and I run down and dump it in the local river. I cut out the middleman. It's faster that way. So it's also a way to save on your budget to that extra 7% bump we're going to see for future projects.
I just run to Iowa and get my 5%.
Thanks for putting up with yet another episode of AV SuperFriends On Topic. You can contact us with questions, topic ideas, or general complaints at avsuperfriends.com.
Nice work, everyone. Sharp broadcast. Really good. Everyone on the floor as well. Really a lot of hustle. I liked it.
The opinions expressed by the AV SuperFriends are solely those of the individuals and do not represent their respective institutions, organizations, companies, or clients.